Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Engineering Project Management Podcast, a podcast that's dedicated to helping project managers to sharpen their project management skills. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Matt Douglas, and in this episode of the Engineering Project Management Podcast, I'm going to be speaking with Pam Hurley. Now, Pam is the president and also the founder of Hurley Write Incorporated. And today we're going to be talking about the critical role of effective writing, exploring common writing pitfalls that impact our productivity as engineers, and also outlining strategies for project managers to improve documentation efficiency. With that, let's jump right in.
Before we dive in, we'd like to recognize our sponsor for this episode, PPI, a leader in engineering exam prep for the FE and PE exams. PPI provides expert prep courses and study resources designed to help you pass the FE and PE exams the first time. PPI's live online courses include hours of lectures, problem-solving demonstrations, exam strategy sessions, office hours, and a passing guarantee. Check out PPI today at ppi2pass.com to see all the options available for FE and PE exam prep. Now let's dive into today's episode.
All right, it is now time for our PM conversation of the week with Pam Hurley. So Pam, we thank you for coming on to the podcast today. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Good. So let's start off by just getting a brief introduction to you, getting to know who you are. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into founding Hurley Write Incorporated?
Sure. My name's Pam Hurley. Obviously, I'm the founder of Hurley Write. Started the business about 35 years ago when I was only 10. Kidding. That's a joke. And I was teaching in academia at the time and realized that a lot of what we were teaching in academia in terms of communication didn't transfer well for a lot of my students who were then getting jobs. And so I started a technical writing class in the university that I was teaching, and based on readability studies, which is what we teach in our classes. That's the foundation. And it was very well received by my students. And I just started calling companies saying, hey, this is what I do, and do you think you benefit? And got overwhelming response, or that was that. So it was a lot of luck, a lot of tenacity, and a lot of just, hard work. And that was back in the day when you could cold call and people would actually answer their phone. So there was that too.
Yeah, I get that. So just a quick question here. What is a readability study?
Great question. A lot of people don't know that. So readability studies are exactly what they say exactly what they sound like. What scholars do is they look at how readers read, how they make sense of information. And so a lot of people believe that, readability is based on the rules you learn in seventh grade about grammar and short sentences and that kind of thing, which is not the case. The other thing we need to understand is that how readers read has changed dramatically, as you can imagine, over the past few years. Readers don't read as much. They're more likely to skim, all of that. And so what readability studies is a science based on how readers read and make sense of information, and how that can change over time.
Okay, awesome. So how do these readability studies directly influence the success of engineering projects through whatever it may be? Is it like an improved documentation that comes as a result of having these readability studies?
Yeah, exactly right. So oftentimes what engineers do and what a lot of professionals do when they get into the workplace is they kind of glom on to grammar rules, and they don't really consider who they're writing to, what that writer's looking for, who they're writing to, what that reader is looking for, and that kind of thing. What readability studies help us do is to hone in on who the actual reader is and what it is that you want them, what it is that the writer wants them to do with the document. So if I don't, we can say, oh, my reader's Matt. Okay. Well, that doesn't give us much information. But if I do a deep dive into how busy you are, what it is you're looking for, those kinds of things, which is what readability studies tell us how to do, then I can write a more targeted document that is going to result in you're being able to find the information that you need when you need it very quickly and easily, instead of, as we often see with documents, is you're having to wade through a lot of information to get to what it is that you're most interested in at that moment.
Okay. And so what are the most common pitfalls that you experience in these readability studies?
Well, with engineering documents in particular, engineers love, I know this is going to come as a big surprise, they love detail, love it. And so, and so what happens oftentimes is that they will include detail that may or may not be germane to the point they're trying to make. So they tend to do that. They tend to include too much detail. They tend to be incredibly verbose, incredibly wordy. So those are the things that we find oftentimes with engineering documents, is that there's just too much information. They don't show the relationship between and among ideas, and they tend to be very, very wordy. And so what readability studies do is help us figure out, okay, is this extra information necessary for this particular reader? What is it that you want the reader to do? Those kinds of things. And that's what readability studies help us determine.
Oh, that's interesting. Because I'm just thinking about the times when I used to go through construction documents, still do. And, you look at like the first couple of pages and there is a page of the tiniest text, and it's an 11 by 17 or larger plan set of just a ton of words. And then it really just makes you wonder if all of those words are actually necessary in those construction documents. So
exactly.
Thank you for your work, because that's definitely going to help our industry a ton.
Yeah.
All right. So what strategies do you recommend for project managers specifically? Like, what do you recommend that project managers improve, without detracting from their core managerial duties?
That's a great question. So one of the things we focus a lot on with our clients is helping project managers and reviewers, and I'm going to use them as the same, project managers / reviewers, helping them understand how to enhance that review process. So, and what I mean by that is that lots of times reviewers, project managers don't do a great job of reviewing, right? Giving feedback and that kind of thing. So one of the things that they can do is, and we can help with that obviously, is to figure out what to review for, how to make comments that add value to the documents, that kind of thing. One of the things we see a lot is that project managers will oftentimes rewrite the documents of their team, and that's a terrible idea. And a lot of, well, it's just easier for me to do it. Totally get that. But what's happening is when you do that is you are teaching your team learned helplessness, because why would I improve my writing skills if I know that you're going to rewrite it for me anyway? So you're teaching your team not to improve their skills when you take the initiative to do that kind of thing. So there's a whole thing involved in reviewing, which project managers may or may not do a good job of. So that's the first thing that I would tell project managers is look at your reviewing process and how are you reviewing, and are your writers improving? Because if they're not improving, then you probably need to look in the mirror and figure out why.
Okay. So what is your approach to teaching effective writing to us as engineers who are typically more focused on quantitative rather than qualitative skills?
Right. And that's a really good question. So one of the things that we teach engineers in particular is to equate writing to problem solving, because the two are very, very much linked. And a lot of times engineers don't think about that. They think about writing as something that is divorced from the real work that they do. But if you think about writing as problem solving, then it becomes a very easy problem solution kind of idea. And what I mean by that is, what is the communication that you are trying to convey to a targeted reader for a desired outcome? And then when we know that, then we can gather up all the data, if you will, to solve that communication problem, because it's exactly the same thing. But we're not. If you ever hit me up on LinkedIn, you can see I have these rants, and I just go on and on and on about how academia does a terrible job of teaching people how to write, because they teach it as a very linear process instead of as a problem-solving process.
Okay. So we talked a little bit about the writing and stuff. Now I want to talk about communication, because that's a huge thing for us as project managers in our industry. So we already know what communication is, obviously, but how can one audit their communication skills so that they can be more effective for their projects? And, basically, how can we address the real problems that we have through doing the communication audit?
Right. So our communication audit looks at everything that's involved in a team's communication process. And that's everything from the tools that they're being given to the documents they write, to the review process, and everything in between. How, for instance, are new engineers onboarded onto an organization in terms of teaching them how they're supposed to write for the organization? Are there mentorships involved? Are they just simply being given documents and says, hey, here's an example of a good document, figure it out? And so the communication audit helps us understand where some of the problems are and how then we can solve them. Because we're working with a big client right now, and we're finding that because of the time it's taking people to write and the time it's taking to review, they're probably losing roughly $125,000 a year just because of the poor communication process that they have in place. And so when we can cut writing time and cut reviewing time, then we can start to, and there's a lost opportunity, cost as well. What could they be doing with the extra time that they're spending? And part of the problem with this particular organization is that there are no clear standards in place. People don't know exactly what it is that they're supposed to do. They don't know what reviewers are looking for. Reviewers don't agree about what they're looking for. So some reviewers may do an in-depth review and others may just do a cursory review. And so because of the lack of standards, there's a lot of time and energy wasted on both the reviewer side and the writer side. So it's a pretty hefty chunk of change for this particular organization.
I'm just thinking about the value of what you're actually providing here. And I mean, obviously, we are numbers driven people,
sure.
And we work for numbers driven entities as well. Just having that actual number of $125,000 in losses that you're actually giving up because of poor communication skills, I can definitely understand why something like this and hiring your services would actually be helpful in making sure that you're, able to meet the bottom line. Because $125,000 is not something just to, throw away lightly.
Right.
So it really just goes to show how communication in general is something that needs to be taught and continuously improved throughout our careers, so that we don't have those implications, in the financial realm.
Absolutely.
Let alone what can happen outside of that.
Well, right. I mean, one of the things we can't measure is, client misunderstanding. How are you losing clients because of your poor communication? What opportunity costs are there? If I'm spending 10 hours a week reviewing it, I should be spending 5. What extra could you be doing with those 5 hours? So there's all kinds of cost involved in that companies just typically don't think about for some reason, but there are costs involved in poor communication, to your point.
Right. And I mean, I think that, this is why, especially in the project management world, we have stakeholder management plans. We have, communications plans that we go through, and we determine how to communicate to the different stakeholders within our, specific projects. But it's not always just about what we're putting out. It's about what we're, keeping internally as well, which brings me to the next topic. So how do you assist engineering teams in establishing some of those practices that we're talking about in order for them to maintain high writing standards throughout the life cycle of their project?
That's a good question. So we have lots of different ways that we do that. One of the things that we do is to sign an NDA, obviously, or CDA, confidentiality, and then we analyze the team's documents. And one of the things, what we're looking for is commonalities. What are some things that they do commonly across the organization? So, for instance, if they hire us for a communication audit, then obviously that's a piece of that. We have companies that just say, no, I just want a writing class. Fine. So if they just want a writing class, that's what we do first. We analyze the documents. We have a team of researchers and a team of analysts who look for common patterns. What are some of the things that are happening in the documents themselves, right? And then from that, we develop a course, a workshop, if you will, that's based on the common issues that we see in those organizations. And the workshops include resources and breakout sessions. They're instructor led. And then we have, after the workshop is complete, we have coaching and long-term retention programs and things like that. Because the reality is that you can take a writing class, and we know people have taken writing classes in university, obviously, but if you don't continue to practice that, if you don't continue to practice what you've learned, then it's really all for naught. So we try to create a whole, we create a whole program so that they can continue to practice and improve their skills over time.
Okay. So I guess that kind of answers my last question. And the last question, just so that was, like, what final piece of advice would you have for anybody that is looking to improve their writing skills, specifically people that are going to be watching this podcast episode here, people that are in the architecture, engineering, and construction industry? What advice would you have finally, if it is something that's different, or if not, if it's like a reiteration of something that you have said before, then that's fine as well. But what advice would you have for us to improve our writing skills?
There are two things. One is to plan the writing. Most people don't. What they do is they sit down, they write, they get it out, and they get it, and it's done. And they don't think twice about it. That's a terrible mistake. Writing is thinking on paper. You have to let your brain work. So you should be planning. You should be spending about 80% of your time planning the document and only 20% of the time writing. But most people don't do that. They spend 20% of the time planning, if they plan at all, and 80% of their time writing. And what happens when you do that is you spend a lot more time on the back end. There's a lot more review involved in that kind of thing. Plan. There's all kinds of tools that people should be using to plan. That's number one. Number two is practice, right? Writing is your deliverable. The document is the deliverable. So it's just like you wouldn't just come in one day and do your job and you're done for the year. Writing is the same thing. You need to be writing every stinking day, regardless, even if it's just sitting down and writing about your day or your dog or whatever the case may be. You've got to practice. And that's what a lot of people don't do, primarily because most engineers that we've worked with don't like to write. I know that's surprising, but they don't like to write. And so if there's, tasks that you have to do that you don't want to do, then you procrastinate, and that makes it worse. And it becomes this vicious cycle, if you will.
Hey, that's very interesting that you say that, because, recently I've actually started doing some more writing myself.
Good.
As far as, just writing down all thoughts that I have.
Good.
Now, obviously it's not going to be every one of them because my brain moves a mile a minute. That's just not going to happen. But at least starting the entry stages of like journaling, maybe this week I'll do like a journal entry for like one of the days out of the week or something. And then maybe I'll revisit it in like another 2 to 3 weeks or something. That to me is a better improvement, and maybe a more realistic improvement, as opposed to just saying, oh, I'm going to journal every day. And then I end up journaling one day and then I never get back to it for the next 5 years. At least I can do it 1 to 2 weeks,
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it has to be realistic. It has to be something that you can do, right? So it's really interesting. And this is just a side note. When I taught at Duke, and I taught in their School of Nursing, and nurses are not great writers typically because they have to, cryptic notes and that kind of thing. And so I asked them to start blogging. And when they started blogging, their writing improved dramatically. There was a dramatic difference between the writing that they were doing for the class and their blogs. Their blogs were much more readable, much easier to read, et cetera, et cetera. It was a really interesting, and again, that's anecdotal. I didn't do any research on it, but it was very interesting how that turned them, because I think people get stuck in, when you think about workplace writing, people get stuck in this mode, right, versus journaling, where it's a different kind of mode and you feel freer. But that kind of writing can oftentimes be better or more effective because people aren't all hung up on, this is the workplace and that kind of fun stuff. But that's just an anecdotal example.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah. And, just to reiterate where I was going, like I'll just write down notes. I'll write down lists for things. I just try to kind of keep one book And that one spiral notebook would be like the host for all of my writing notes. And it's kind of like the way that, well, the reason why I do it that way is because it's kind of like, okay, this is my brain here.
Mm-hmm.
And by me actually writing it out, it's better for me to visualize. It's better for me to plan, remember, recall things. I mean, because, we're getting up there in age now. Well, me specifically. You, I don't know.
You're way older than you are, yeah. but to your
it's
point,
very helpful.
I mean, a lot of people will, they say, what's in my brain? Being in your brain and being on paper, two very different things. To your point, that's a great habit. Even if you're just writing cryptic notes every day. And we have some folks, we say, well, record it. Get your phone and record your ideas. That's another way to get those ideas down. And that's all at the end of the day. That's the precursor to writing, and everything else is getting those ideas down. But if you wait until the moment is perfect, the moment will never be. So I commend you for that. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. And when we get back, we are going to have Pam in our PM Pitfalls hot seat. Stay tuned. All right, everyone, we are back now with Pam Hurley, and we are going to have her in our PM Pitfalls segment now. So, Pam, we just wanted to ask you, what is the biggest PM pitfall that you've identified in your career in the AEC industry as well, combined if possible? And how would you recommend overcoming it or avoiding it for the project managers that are watching this video right now?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for having me in the hot seat. One of the biggest problems that we see is project managers having expectations for writing, that it should be this way and that kind of thing, but they don't have a process in place to ensure that happens, or the expectations aren't communicated to their writers, right? So it becomes this never-ending cycle of, I wanted you to do it this way and you did it that way, and everybody's confused about what's going on. So you can have expectations, but you have to have a concrete way for people to meet them. So whether that means having a process in place or having written standards in place, whatever that is, you want your writers to be successful, right? But they can't be successful if they don't know what's expected of them and or how to reach those goals.
Well, thanks, Pam. We really appreciate you really giving us all of this advice about effective communication and writing skills. So again, could you give us some more information on where we can find you, if you have any books that you recommend or teachings that you recommend, any resources that we can use to connect with you and learn from you some more?
Sure. Great. Thank you very much for having me. So you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Pam Hurley. My email is pam@hurleywrite.com. Visit our website. We have lots and lots and lots of blogs about a lot of different topics. They're very high quality. They're very high level. There are a lot of great books out there about communication. If you'd like some recommendations, I recommend that you contact me directly, pam@hurleywrite.com. Let me know what you're interested in, and I'm happy to make recommendations along that line.
Awesome. Well, we really appreciate having you on, Pam. Take care.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good one. Please remember that you can find the show notes for this episode at www.engineeringpmpodcast.com. And there you're going to be finding a summary of all of the key points that we discussed in today's episode, as well as any of the links, resources, websites, or books that we mentioned in today's episode as well. Until next time, I wish you all the very, very best in your project management endeavors. Take care.